I am very excited about this conversation. It's something that I have been looking forward to for many weeks now since we first had the idea and we first had a conversation about it. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Francesca. Francesca is Phantm's lead researcher. She has been engaged with regenerative farming practices, or best practice rather, on the Mornington Peninsula for several years. Francesca has a degree in biochemistry from Melbourne University, and her interest in material design and bio-based innovation brought her to Phantm just over 12 months ago as our lead researcher. I can't believe it's only been 12 months. It feels like both forever and a day. Uh, Francesca jumped straight in and has worked on numerous projects at Phantm, including for Wine Australia, Asahi Beverages, Thank You Group, and she took a really central role in shaping the David Jones report, which is that piece of work is really the focus of today. And then, of course, we're also joined by Dana King, who is the Sustainability Manager for Environment at David Jones, Australia's oldest department store for luxury retail, which I did not know until I found that out from Dana. She has a rich background in sustainability advisory and circular economy, having been a senior consultant at Edge Impact on the circular economy team. And now Dana leads David Jones circularity initiatives for fashion and packaging, decarbonization strategies, and climate risk approach. Uncovering the intersection of circularity and efficiency to create commercial advantage is Dana's specialty. With a no-nonsense approach, Dana leverages a data-driven and solution-centric mindset to deliver opportunities to reduce environmental impact and costs across the value chain. So our focus today really is to talk about the work that Phantm was so fortunate to do in partnership with David Jones. Because this is a little bit unique for anyone who has attended our past webinars, the structure of today is a little bit unique because Dana has been so forthright and generous in offering us an opportunity to really look under the hood. It's not something we often get a chance to do. I noticed in Dana's bio, she uses the phrase no nonsense, and that's just the perfect descriptor. There's no fluff here. We are going to get right into it. And in order to set the scene, we did, we have published a case study on the work that we've done together, but in the event that not everyone on this call has had the opportunity to read that case study, I thought we could take a very quick spin through just a bit of a scene setter or a context setter. So the focus today, packaging progress at David Jones, and who are Phantm, for anyone who's unfamiliar. We are an independent packaging sustainability company based in Melbourne. We are packaging obsessed, and we have a material science background and mirror image of Francesca's background as well. Our mission is to support businesses to reduce cost, reduce waste, and reduce risk across their packaging and processes. So the project we embarked upon together, the purpose of the engagement was to reduce packaging impact. And there were a couple of very interesting constraints that made this project both challenging and incredibly rewarding. So 3 constraints. One was no redesigns. One was no operational disruption. So this is a complex retail environment in which we're operating, and we wanted to effect the greatest change without creating any kind of inefficiencies or disruptions to the operational processes. And lastly, of course, David Jones is known for customer experience, and this is not something that could be compromised through any of the outcomes of this project. So to kind of get into the process, as far as inputs are concerned, we were looking at David Jones' existing packaging data. We importantly had access to sustainability and retail teams. And as we'll get into a little bit later this morning, we were able to conduct some on-site store visits as well. And as a result of that, the outputs were opportunities that we identified to reduce cost, reduce environmental impact, and enhance the customer experience. So I talked about not wanting to compromise it, but we found ways or identified ways to enhance it as well. So that's yeah, as I said, a bit of a context setter. I think if we, I just want a bit of housekeeping just to let you know how today will flow. I've got questions for Francesca and Dana that we'll have the chance to hear a bit more from them, people who are really hands-on in the project. And then we'll be able to open it up to an audience Q&A. So as we're chatting, if any questions pop up for you, something that you're curious about that you'd like to ask either the Phantm or David Jones team, feel free to pop that in the chat and we'll be able to hop into that a bit later on. And we'll endeavor to close out before the top of the hour, just wanting to respect everybody's time. Dana, I might start with you. I am very curious. What made you decide to take this project on in the first place? What were your visions? What were you hoping to achieve? And what sort of hurdles or challenges were you anticipating?
Thanks, Caitlin. So I suppose we're in a position towards the end of last year where we could take on a small project. We knew that was the capacity that we had, and we really wanted to make sure we had a win. We had a really strong desire to create change. A lot of what we need to do is investigation or data based, but we wanted to make sure we were creating change. And recognizing that we only had a small project available, we looked at just our B2C packaging and the packaging that we were in charge of. So we created a small scope to make that opportunity for impact more realistic, and also saw that those opportunities for quick wins are also probably at this stage what's most aligned to packaging improvements for us. So if you look at targets, it's packaging per product that is where we're sitting. So looking at a quick win project and a smaller project allowed us to really align with that and really look at solutions that were going to show up in our packaging impact reductions rather than bigger projects that might take a little bit longer. So that was our really core aim, is how can we get some quick wins? Let's see action now. And in terms of challenges for that, we were anticipating, I suppose we pre-anticipated the struggles that B2B packaging might have or other larger projects would have and how long they would take. So we decided, let's just do small, because small is still impact and small has more impact than you realize. And that would allow us to get that going whilst the bigger projects happened in the background, and we can effectively do both.
I just want to pull a thread on something you mentioned around packaging per product. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's important?
I think perhaps even in preparation for this webinar, I was having to think about like why exactly is it that quick win projects are valuable? And if you take a step back from that, the reason we're doing this in the first place is because we want to reduce our packaging impact, and that's usually aligned to a target. Say for APCO, we have targets that we are committing to, and when you're looking at that, it is packaging per product. You're not looking at, oh, we're just changing an entire way we do packaging. That is definitely useful in many cases. But in terms of how a business operates and how targets operate, it is packaging per product. If you reduce the amount of packaging that's on each product, that will show impact for you. So having that mindset, I think, can simplify what you're trying to find as an opportunity. And we took that on board here, both in what we asked for and in how Phantm approached the project. It was like, what goes on one product and what can we do with that, rather than potentially biting off more than we can chew or more than is achievable at this point in time.
You just mentioned about Phantm's approach, and I kind of want to hand the mic over to Francesca. Can you share a little bit about how you approached the diagnostic or discovery phase? What were you looking for and what did you find?
Yeah, definitely. In that initial discovery phase, we are looking for two main things. We want quantitative information and qualitative information. So to start off, we look at that quantitative data. That means all the existing packaging data David Jones have. We looked at packaging specifications, material weights, purchase orders, sales orders, logistics data as well. So where those products are being moved within the David Jones network. And that wasn't always readily available information. It took some work from Dana as well to coordinate that within the team. But using that existing data is really important because it tells us about the part of the problem that we know and that is visible, and it allows us to identify the gaps that we need to fill in. And then next is kind of, once we've identified those gaps, we use that qualitative information to sort of build out our understanding of the real world applications of this packaging. So for that part, that's where we went to site. We visited 2 different David Jones locations. We spoke to the staff on the ground and kind of chatted to them about what their pain points were with packaging. We watched the process of them packing as well. So that was like e-commerce orders, gift packaging as well, which is a really signature offering for David Jones, and click and collect, things like that, and collected physical samples of all the packaging too. So it was like a mini performance assessment in a way. And the reason we do all of that is that it gives us a more full picture than what we would find in just a spreadsheet alone, and really helps us understand why and how David Jones is using their packaging, what is the function of it. Just helps us uncover those gaps really easily and find out where we need to go a bit deeper as well.
And it sort of brings a richness, I'd imagine, as well. So you look at these spreadsheets in 2D format, and then you go in store, and it kind of brings that third dimension to life, and helps you to, again, I'm going to speculate, interpret that quantitative data in a context-specific way. You've sort of answered this question. I might, it's for both of you. So Dan, I'd be curious to hear from you as well. Obviously, this project involved both on-site work and deep data analysis. And I'm really curious to perhaps build upon what Francesca has said. What's the benefit of combining both of those approaches?
I think for my reflections on the project is, one, data is the way to get things moving. Like, we need data to be able to understand what the current impact is and what the impact opportunities are. So data is essential, and it's often the key to unlocking engagement with the rest of the business. So I think that was very important here, as in any case. And something I'd like to note is that we have very good B2C packaging data because we need to report on it for APCO. So we started there. Like, if you have the data, start with that data. But Phantm was incredibly good at looking at that data and pulling out insights from it. So I've had this data sitting with me, but it was really powerful to see how Phantm was able to take that and combine it with store observations and get those really important insights out of it. And then on the flip side, the store visits, I could see how useful they were in bringing life to the data and understanding the nuances of David Jones's operations. And we are incredibly customer focused, and the customer experience is very important to us and important to our staff, and making sure that was understood by the Phantm team so they could take it on board when you look through the data and develop our insights. And it was really enjoyable actually to watch that store visit engagement happen, because Francesca and Ed were able to ask questions to and observe operations in the store that you just don't see when you're in-house because you're used to seeing it. So we're able to unlock some information that we wouldn't have independently.
It was a really enjoyable process on our end as well. I think that was one of the most valuable parts of this project, was the conversations with staff and discovering just how engaged the staff at David Jones are and how committed they are to that customer experience. Because from our perspective, it helps us shape the way that we will frame these recommendations. We know that we're looking for ways to optimize packaging that doesn't compromise on that experience. And I think in retail, being so customer facing, you actually have this really great opportunity to interact with your customers and take them on the journey of why you make a certain packaging change. So that's where the engagement from staff is actually a really great tool. They kind of become this conduit between that information and communicating those outcomes. So it's great to see that David Jones already had that in action.
And I could just add to that, it was quite helpful to understand that from the get-go, to make sure that the output and the report wasn't designed for me to read. It was designed for other people in my business to read. So I haven't taken a report that is useful to me and then needed to rework it. It's already sitting in that format, in the language that other key players in the business care about, so we're able to communicate on a cost or benefit or an efficiency benefit alongside that environmental impact benefit. I found that quite useful, and that came out of that store visit piece of being able to understand what actually matters, so that that's fed into the insights.
Maybe we could get a little bit specific on this, because this sounds like a very juicy topic. So having spent time in store, reviewing packaging formats, reviewing operational processes, I'm really curious, and perhaps Francesca, this is one for you. What did that reveal that the data alone didn't?
It's a good question. I think the main thing that we took away from that experience is the way that sustainability and the outcomes that we shape have to be about simplification of design. And I think that DJ's has some really iconic, beautiful packaging. You know, you immediately think of that iconic black and white logo and the houndstooth design. And the formats that it comes in are also very simple. And I think there's an elegance to that as well. And so there were, insights that we had about how those formats could be potentially made to be like more recyclable or use different materials that continue that sustainable principle without compromising on that design. And so the gift packaging comes to mind as one for me, that in store you got to see the care that these staff are taking with these orders. Like, it's a beautiful process to watch, to be honest. And so, we liked to frame our recommendations with that in mind. There has to be a human element to it. It always has to come down to why these products are being used and to what purpose. And so I think that is the main thing that we take out of those store visits.
So through this diagnosis, this discovery, this analysis, we then provided a series of recommendations or opportunities to David Jones. Dana, I'm very curious to know what packaging projects are moving forward and why.
So we actually have quite a few in train at the moment, also reflecting quite a few opportunities that came out of this project. So it's nice to have a lot to choose from. The ones that we have looked at based on level of impact for level of effort. So even with our scope of quick wins, we're in a business, a lot of things are moving and we still need engagement. So there's still certain activities will take more engagement than others. So we have focused on the delivery packaging. So for us, delivery packaging is a huge portion of what we need to report on for APCO. So the boxes and the wrap and gift boxes, etc. So we chose to look into that space, and particularly there were a lot of opportunities for our boxes. So we are looking at how we can improve the recycled content of those boxes, looking at the flute of the boxes, so that's the thickness of the box, and that was actually something that might go back to the question Francesca just had of what was unlocked in stores. You wouldn't think about the flute of a box. You only think about it when you're standing in store watching someone put something quite small into a box because it needs to be protected, but it's not that big. Well, that doesn't weigh a lot, so it doesn't need a box that's that thick. So that's something that we're really excited about, is looking at that flute thickness of our boxes, and that can save emissions and also save costs and potentially efficiencies in packing, etc. So those are the main ones that we're looking at, and with those we can add in messaging improvements, and we are also looking at our bags as well. And again, that comes down to understanding the ones that were still low impact, low effort for high impact, and being able to push those along, because we want to be able to chip away at this, and we can do these without too much interference with process flows at the moment.
Can you speak to the scale of the impact of some of those solutions?
Yeah, some of them are quite surprising. So with the various options with the boxes, we're looking at a 10 to 15% reduction in cost, and about the same, if not a little bit more, reduction in impact so emissions for those boxes. This is based on like annual numbers. So that is a huge change for us, for things that are quite easy for us to implement. So that's fantastic to see. There's also interesting, really cool one was looking into ink, and ink actually makes up about 1% of some of our packaging. So being able to have a look at that, and 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you look at ink, like who's ever thinking about ink? Like I never would have thought to look at the ink. And that is important. It's important from a weight perspective. It's important from a recyclability perspective, if in terms of the fiber that it's been printed on. So there are surprising amounts of impacts there, which are quite exciting. And then on the flip side, not the flip side, but non-impact side, what it was really encouraging to see was that a lot of these solutions will provide an elevated and refreshed customer experience as well. So it's not necessarily sustainability and quality or customer experience, I think, are often seen as a win-lose scenario. And this project was a very good exercise in demonstrating that those go hand in hand, and in sustainability can offer you new opportunities for that customer experience. So I can see, and those are probably the ones that we are pursuing, where we can see that there's that benefit as well. That's definitely important to us.
And it's so exciting to me, to this notion of tethering commercial wins with environmental impact reduction, that it does not need to be one at the compromise of another, and that you genuinely can have both. That's exciting to me as a consumer, and it's also really exciting to me as someone who endeavors to drive change within business. It's so great to hear of specific examples where that was true. I completely echo your sentiment that ink is not something that ever would have come to mind for me when I thought about where to focus. And Francesca, that makes me think, for yourself and the solutions team conducting this analysis and delivering this work, were there any examples where, or any decisions where the quote unquote right or correct path was not immediately obvious? And if you could maybe speak a little bit about how you navigated those gray areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're aware a lot of the time we're not going to have black and white answers, and it is rare to have those moments where the right path is super clear. But I think when it comes to those gray areas, we have to remember that we're working in an imperfect system at the moment. The packaging landscape leaves a lot to be desired. And so whilst we want to be innovative and really forward thinking, we also have to work for the system we have to get the best outcome in that system. And the example Dana mentioned before of the dispatch boxes is a really great one for that, because it's not always clear sometimes which thing to prioritize when you're looking at making a change, and the impact can actually be really different to what you expect. And so the decision of like looking at the flute, for example, when we're looking at packaging like that, we need to think about optimal performance and weight. So that could be, examining the size of the box relative to what's actually going in it, or reducing the mass in any way we can. And so, designing with the system that we have in mind, reduction of mass is really important, because those small changes like the ink, it might seem insignificant on one bag, but when you're looking across a whole portfolio, those small changes have a really huge impact. To answer that question, the solutions won't always be linear, but we have to design to get the best outcome in the system we have right now. And that principle guides how we find that right path.
I just want to add to that. I suppose you made a good point about like just looking at the weight of the boxes. And I think what really came through on this project is that the like essence of circularity is just pure play efficiency. So often we look at, if we're in this space, we're looking at bigger and better solutions like recycled content and recoverability and reuse, which is fantastic, and we definitely need to do that. But often in many businesses, there's the opportunity for reduction and avoidance is still very much there, and that doesn't require a lot of business model change or anything. And I think that what was helpful in this project is that we actually did just take a step back and say, like, what, let's just look at this. Let's just look at a box and question everything and be curious about it and say, why not on it? And that helped uncover the things like looking at the flutes or looking at like why we have, I don't know, 12 different sizes of boxes that we offer. Are they all useful? Do they provide that? And it is having a look at that where you can be quite successful in this space and have quite a lot of impact in this space by just simplifying the approach and starting with that reduction and avoidance before you need to go with the nonlinear approach of looking at other solutions that will require a lot more process change and behavior change in the business.
You know, a total overhaul, costly. Yeah, that change management piece can be challenging. And I guess that brings me to thinking about implementation. So it's all well and good for us to hand you a report with recommendations, but then it's up to you to really champion this within the business. What were the biggest learnings or lessons that you took away through that process of turning those insights into implementation?
I think there's probably two key learnings that have come to mind. One is about engagement. So it's really hard to understand where you need to bring others in to the process. You either want to have them on board from the get-go because they happen to be doing another project that's quite similar, and you can feed into it and you can ride their wave of their project, and it can help get the approvals done much faster and make sure you don't miss the boat on an opportunity as well if they're doing a change. Versus those that don't want to be, don't have the time, or they have other priorities because they have a lot to do, and will only be interested when you have that cost information and that data and insights available for them. So I don't have a, I don't think there's a perfect way to do that, but I definitely could see the value of just very casually introducing the project to as many people as you can, as soon as you can, so that it's on their radar, like without, it's being able to bring it into their minds without, pardon me, requiring anything from anybody just yet, because those that want to be involved will get involved at that point. Those that don't want to be involved just yet, until you have the data, they're primed and they're ready and they know it's coming, and that's okay. So I think that was really important, and I could see in our implementation, the few people that were involved earlier, we managed to fly through it and have ticked through, say, like our value chain engagement and our design team engagement, whereas maybe with other parts of our business who are like the online team, we need to, they needed a bit more information, or those that are higher up needed a little bit more information. And that has slowed us a little bit, and that's okay. Like, it is what it is, but it's recognizing how, like, building those relationships, as we say it on repeat, that's quite important. So I think that was a good learning to be aware of in future for when I'm trying to implement new projects. And then on the other side of things, it's that balance of project scale versus being able to implement. So something that's quite a positive and maybe a challenge in this is that as we've brought forward a couple packaging opportunities to other parts of the business, small little things keep getting added onto it, which is fantastic, because it means, okay, we're creating momentum and we can, let's add in this design change. Let's add in, if we're going to do this, we might as well do that. But you do hit a point where if you add all those things in, it now becomes a big project that requires a lot of change and a lot of stakeholder engagement, and it stops anything from happening. And I'm a really big believer in just baby steps, like just small little things, get it done. Doesn't require process change. There's usually a cost saving in it, and it doesn't impede on a lot of other people. So you're able to get that done. You get that done, it's fine, and then you do the next thing. That is often the case. And I say for us, we're in this interesting point where we have support for a lot of our changes, but we're trying to figure out, do we do these changes or do we try to add a few extra in? And that is slowing us down our implementation, which we just need to work through. And it'll be different, I would assume, for every business on how it operates and what the changes need to be. But it is a very, I think it needs to be a conscious effort to decide what scale of change you want to do, based on how fast you want to get something across the line or how your business operates.
Phantm's in-house packaging guru, Ed Whitehead, has a phrase that you're reminding me of right now that we hear all the time, which is progress over perfection. If your vision is to, revolutionize things, that is a very challenging place to start, because that's a big mountain to climb. In fact, it actually reminds me of something that my dad says, which is, it's just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. You can't take it all on at once.
No.
So we obviously had the privilege of engaging with you. Also, as Francesca mentioned, we had the opportunity to engage with some of the store staff through our on-site visits. And I also heard you mention value chain. And I am really curious if there were any, as far as it relates to other aspects of the business, were there any unexpected ripple effects from the work that showed up?
I suppose there was like a small ripple in terms of getting a little, making more people in other parts of the business aware of the opportunities in this space. And I could see that in often I was having a conversation. I think I was prepared to have a conversation and really needing to engage and educate and sell the benefit. But getting into a lot of conversations and the other half already being on board. So often it's not that others don't want to do this, they just need that extra step. So, and again, you go in with a smaller project, you're not asking for a big change. It's like, oh, we can do this, and it's great, and that helps them, and they're excited about it. So I think getting to see that excitement, bringing it to life a little bit more was quite exciting. Double up on those experiences with different conversations. And then on the other side, maybe beyond packaging itself, is by going through this project and going through something that was smaller, meant I've gotten to engage with quite a few different parts of our value chain team, our online team, our design team, customer experience, etc. It's allowed me to connect with all of them, and it's allowed them to see opportunities in this space, and maybe bring more understanding of how I can assist them. And it means I'm now brought in on other projects much sooner, so they can understand that value. So I think it is that opportunity of, you do the small thing and it unlocks and it creates momentum for more change. Like your analogy of like one bite at a time, it's a lot easier to chew that and you slowly get into it, rather than trying to just go, yep, we're doing this massive change, and they're just thrown, and it can put people off guard in that respect.
It's about taking people on the journey.
Exactly.
Yeah, I imagine, if I had to guess, there may be some other people listening in today who are also working on or within sustainability teams in other businesses. And this is one I'm happy to field to both of you. Do you have any advice for anyone who is in a sustainability team trying to do similar work in a large, complex business?
Yeah, I think to kind of continues on from what Dana was saying, but I think one of the most valuable things that you can do is having better data. And one of the great things about the process of this project is that we kind of were able to centralize all of the information within the David Jones business, all those things Dana worked really hard to go out and find from this team and this team, and you kind of bring it all together in one place. The value of that is, something that people don't think about a lot, because all the information is there, and it is just about collating and interpreting it in a way that can help you prioritize what you need to do. It helps unlock those, numbers, or sometimes it's just a little piece of evidence that you need to take into a meeting to give you a little bit more validation in like why we go down this track. So I think that's one of the things that I would say is like a really good first step. And on top of that, going like to ground, meeting the people, talking to your team, like that process as well was invaluable, and just like bringing a little bit more context to the numbers that we had. So yeah, I think those would be the two key recommendations.
I would agree with you, Francesca. I could see so much value in us doing both of those activities. I'd say from my perspective, it is just really understanding that like solutions don't need to be complicated, and simple does have impact. So start with what you know and what you can do. Like, it doesn't need to be hard. What data do you have, and start there. You don't need to check whether it's going to it's the most important project that you need to be working on, because usually you can do small projects without any detriment to your longer or greater goals. It's like, why not do both? Let's get these small wins on the board whilst we're building out the longer ones, and look in that progress over perfection approach. Like, it's baby steps. It's a lot easier to do that than trying to go for those massive wins on their own, and they usually have far greater impact, both direct and indirect, than you initially realize. So I will always recommend that in any sorts of projects in my space.
Like that ink example, you know, when we're talking about scale, something very thin, light, unexpected can really have orders of magnitude greater impact than you might anticipate.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's travel back in time. Dana, if we were going to go back to the very outset of this project when we first started speaking about it, is there anything that you would tell past you? Is there any advice that you would give to past you? At
the things I would say, Caitlin. For this project, I think it would be getting those casual conversations in earlier. I think there will always be people that need the data, and that's okay, but having that chat and not asking of others. I think there was a little bit of, just need to get this across the line. I just want to get this done and have this data, and then I can show everyone what I'm doing, because I wasn't quite sure what we were going to reveal. And I think the power of having others be a part of the conversation earlier, and saying, oh, we're actually working on this. Like, what are you guys up to? Like asking the online delivery team, how are you guys going? We're looking into this. Is there anything you want us to have a look in? That little bit of offer something for free before you, like, I can't remember the name, what the analogy is, but I'm sure we all know what I'm trying to say. But offering that little bit of help at the start, and it will reap rewards in the background. So if I could go back, I would try and get those conversations happening earlier, just to be aware and be better informed on when to engage different parts of the business once we had those insights, or if anyone wanted to be a part of it as well. That's always a good thing.
That engagement piece seems to come up again and again. So like you're mentioning, having those casual conversations early, priming people, getting them thinking about it. And also, Francesca, from your side, engaging with other stakeholders within the business. That engagement piece comes up again and again. Often at Phantm, we talk about the power of data, and I wholeheartedly, believe in it. And it's also not the whole story. Like at the outset of the conversation, we were talking about that beautiful marriage of qualitative and quantitative data and how important they both are.
Yeah, and I do think maybe a key point is it's casual conversation. I think projects can get blown out of proportion if it's like, okay, I need to formally engage with this person and get them involved, and they go, no, I don't want to do that. Or because you're asking for something for someone, you can get a lot of resistance and apprehension from others. Whereas if you're just there's been numerous times when I've just been walking past someone in the office, I'm having that conversation, I'm like, oh, I'm actually working on this at the moment. And then you get to be involved in it, and you understand it, and you can clock it for later. So it doesn't need to make your project massive. It can still be your project, and you can still be the one doing it, and it can stay small. But there is so much value in those interactions with others, and just making them aware of it, and it can have benefits without having imposing too much on anyone.
Sounds like sort of soft diplomacy, in other words.
Professional making friends, potentially.
Water cooler chat used to be about Game of Thrones. Now it's about packaging.
Obviously, much better.
I've been very fortunate to ask all the questions so far. I am aware there are a number of friends on call with us as well. So I'd really like to open things up to anyone that's joined us today. If you've got any questions for Dana or for Francesca, I encourage you to pop those in the chat, and we can field some of those. And maybe while we're waiting for some of those to come through, I'm going to ask one last question that I'm going to be selfish. I didn't get the chance to get to, which is about, Francesca, you spoke about prioritization. And when we think about this elephant metaphor, do we start with the trunk or the feet, or stretching the metaphor? Nope, I'm going to leave that one. Where do we begin? You know, we can't do everything. How did you balance quick wins with longer term opportunities when you were shaping the recommendations?
I think, I mean, who doesn't love a quick win? And as Dana said, there's so many benefits to them. Those baby steps are really important to build momentum. I think they do serve a long-term objective a lot of the time, and it's really valuable to understand that even something small that might be really, really easy to change will also have a flow-on effect in other parts of the business, and that's a positive. On the solutions team, we like to joke that we love to go a little bit out of scope sometimes. And one of the things
I've seen that. I can validate
we get
that.
excited. We get excited. But one of the things we noticed during this process that really caught our attention was actually an opportunity around e-commerce and like David Jones' online portal. And we were kind of thinking about how little improvements potentially in like including more sizing information, that's an example, that could help customers make more accurate or more informed purchasing decisions would actually end up decreasing the amount of returns. And that was something we were thinking about. How can we make small changes in the digital world which actually have a tangible impact in the physical world? And we know that those physical changes are the harder things to do, and they take longer. So that was a way that we framed those quick wins as like, this is something we can do now, and this is the potential flow-on impact. And then once we've made that quick win, what are the things we need to look at further down the track? So say there was that online adjustment, then we look at when there are things like return packaging, how can we optimize that? How could we include recycled material? How can we minimize the amount of transport? So yeah, the quick wins and long term are very connected, and we liked to frame it in that way. We know they're related, yeah.
And that kind of momentum building piece, if you can get some quick wins on the board, you know, you've both sort of spoken to this already, but then you start to garner momentum around it, and you catch other teams' attentions, and it could become, bigger in a great way. We do have one question in the chat from Matt. How do you plan to measure the collective impact over time? And is it important to retain a record of improvement?
Great question. We will, in this case, because we are working with our B2C packaging, we are in a great position where we already report annually for 𝗴𝗀𝗀, and we are already pulling all of that data together. So we will use our 𝗴𝗀𝗀 data reporting to measure each of those impacts. And I think it goes back to what I said at the start, that we are pursuing projects that are packaging per product because it aligns with like tangible impact. So the type of solutions that we are pursuing will definitely show up in that. So it will be easy for us to look at, say, recycled content or the weight of our boxes, or any other changes in weights or design that we want to do will show up in that, and we can measure. We will definitely use a baseline of our previous 𝗴𝗀𝗀 reporting, so that's available to us, and I think it is very important to have a baseline. I do know in some cases we might not have perfect data, but there's always percentage change, and I think that's a really helpful tool as well, to be able to, if we're short on data, we can still use relative impact if we don't have those pure play numbers, and we'll use that where we need to. But I think we are, with the type of projects we're working, we're in a very good position to be able to report on this.
We've got a really interesting question from April in the chat, and it's quite topical. We're hearing a lot about greenwashing and greenhushing. And April's question is, firstly, she says, thank you for everything that you shared today. Do you imagine the changes in wins will be designed primarily to be seamless and invisible to customers, or will there be any outward storytelling? I know you're not on the comms or marketing team, but I'm curious if what you think about that.
That's a really good question. I think it's very well phrased about that invisible solutions versus outwardly facing. I suppose in this project, the types of projects that are pure play efficiency and were easy to implement happen to be those that are more invisible. So not intentionally, the projects will possibly be more of an invisible nature, because we're not going to necessarily tell customers that we've changed the flute on our cards. They don't care. That's okay. But I think I think that's important. I think there is definitely that balance of making sure customers are aware of your making change, and we might communicate that we have created changes, but I suppose there isn't that desire to make sure we've stamped something on the box to say we changed this to the boxes, these boxes to this, or any other changes that we decide to pursue. And I think the approach here was impact over communication. I think we do. There is always pressure to communicate your sustainability endeavors to make sure customers know that you are aligned with their beliefs and values. At the same, the flip side, having to balance greenwashing concerns at the moment. But I think this approach actually allowed us not to have to be guided by that, and was guided by what is genuine change, and that removes those concerns in the first place, because we know we're making a change. We're not trying to find something to suit a storyline that comes second. It's easy to communicate real impact.
The North Star is a little bit different in that case. Sorry.
No, all good. I think I was just going to add that I think one of the really interesting things in this process as well was finding ways that outcomes can actually implicitly communicate changes to customers. For example, the ink example we were talking about earlier, switching to a bag that has maybe a reduction of ink, or using, say, like craft paper, which visually is, sends a really strong message about a sustainable change. That's a really explicit way, but there are also ways that simplifying design can send that message. And I was reading the other day about how consumers perceive sustainable products, or what they perceive to be sustainable packaging, and recyclability was actually the number one thing that they thought of that constituted a sustainable packaging product. So in making products that are more recyclable, or appear more recyclable by a simplified design, I think that's a way that you can kind of balance the line between, it doesn't need to be explicit storytelling, but making those packaging designs does tell a story.
Rookie. I've got another question in the chat from Monty. We've talked about both data and prioritization, and Monty's question ties those two together. Does data help you prioritize what to tackle?
Definitely. I think it's very important at different stages. So it helps if you have the data in the first place, you can very quickly look at what's going to make the most impact. So for us, with our APCO reporting, 92% of our reportable packaging is our delivery packaging. So the packaging that we put on our products. So we knew right away that that was the biggest opportunity for us in the B2C space at the moment. And luckily it's also easy, because there's a relatively small number of packaging types that we're working with to make up that 92%, whereas the other 8% is thousands upon thousands of different products that we're trying to work with. So I think it's very helpful to understand what to look at, like your quick hotspot analysis, and then also looking at what the change might be. So depending on who you're talking to, you need weight data, you need quantity data, you need cost data, you need emissions data. All of those different things help you speak the language or whoever you're trying to talk to. And it's important to work with that as much as we would love everyone to be on board with it, because it's the right thing to do. Those numbers are the numbers that can help, and that can help you can use them to be more successful in your conversations, and know where it might be that this is a simple solution, and it's really cheap, but there's actually low impact, or this is like quite expensive, but its cost per item is or cost per impact is really low. So yeah, it's definitely a key part of this.
That reminds me of another classic Phantm tagline we have, which is you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think, yeah, Dana just put that really well, that it gets you to the starting line, having that information, and you have to kind of know your baseline to be able to work from there. So,
and to know what's better. If you don't know where you are, how do you know where to go?
Yeah, of course.
It's simple. I promised that we would finish up before the top of the hour, and I want to stick to my word. I just want to reflect back the two key sort of takeaways for me from this conversation. So one is that notion of progress over perfection, moving away from that perfectionist all or nothing mindset, is the first step to take before taking the very first small step. And also that engagement piece that really shone through for me from both of you, engaging staff early on, engaging different stakeholders within the business, even those who you might not at the outset think are directly connected to the project itself, but getting everyone involved, because anyone that has their hands on packaging, which is pretty much everybody, is going to have something to add and going to have something to share. So I just really want to thank you. That was very fruitful for me. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today. I really appreciate your time. I want to thank Francesca. I would like to thank Dana as well. And I guess just to let everybody know, we are going to share a recording from today. And I encourage you, if you've got any questions that you didn't get the chance to ask, or any thoughts, that this conversation might have catalyzed for you, we'd love to hear them. So I encourage you to get in touch. But I will say now, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and you'll be hearing from us soon.